let's move into story. And I wanted to ask you, Carpenter apparently consciously chose to keep the cast. Oh, and this is for everyone in the chat too. Carpenter consciously chose to keep the cast all male. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, normally you like to see, even as a kid, and I don't think this is sort of a recent thing, is you would become aware of, you'd watch something like The Longest Day, and they have like one nurse, with the speaking part. But this one, I mean, it's, I don't know the makeup of Antarctic research groups necessarily of the 1980s and before that. So
apparently, he was quoted in the making of documentary, just so you know, Jim, that he knew women worked in the Antarctic at the time that they were putting the movie together.
Yeah, I suspect there may be more now, but anyway, maybe that would have added an element that would have just been kind of, I in this case, it didn't seem that egregious, but like I said, it's always nice to have a sort of a varied cast. But and the other thing too is I may be affected by the fact that I first saw this when I was a young teen. Many, many years ago, and this is what it is. It is what it is. But I mean, if it was made today, and of course, the 2011 version has as a star a woman.
The star, Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
As the
person who managed to be in a number of action-oriented films, and then I said after her last one, Kate, I was she should be in action films because I'm an asshole. Well, let me take a look, see if anyone's chimed in on the chat on that. Oh, DMG Sausage Fest.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? The only thing I will say, and Udo, we'd have to ask Carpenter himself, right? Mm-hmm. He did it in the documentary. It was almost like an offhand, deal with all of that. I don't think it was, deal with all, women in it. More, second you put a woman in it, there's going to be pressure. How much skin can she show? Who's she falling in love with? Oh, McCready and her. The casting, influences come up in that. And now that said, 1982, even now, it would be hard to resist that. I really want to see the 2011 version. One of the things you don't hear about its criticism was something to do with that. So, they may have been able to, make a mediocre movie, but at least avoided those pitfalls. But that's about the best I can do. Is the silver lining to a dark cloud? Really, not a one. Couldn't find a couple of women who, to cast in this picture. 1982, and how do who dies then, and who falls in love with who, and.
Yeah, thinking about an equally nasty movie was released a few years before, and that was Alien, right? So,
excellent. With two women, and that falling in love, women.
And they weren't just one of them was the lead, and so
excellent point, Jim.
Maybe that was a bit of a chicken shit call, but I often total side aside, but. Often in movies, I just watched the Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio over the weekend with my wife, and there's a mention of Geppetto losing his first son. No mention of the wife at all. The son Carlo comes from nowhere apparently.
I lost my boy, and
so there's some
indeterminate woman who birthed him.
Not a single mention, not a picture, not a reference. It was just him and Carlo the whole time, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So, and that's that's an avoidance thing. There are often characters without mums, women who aren't present, and this might be just a storytelling bit of laziness. I don't know, but yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great comment, Jim, and I'm glad I asked the question. I'm glad you brought it up. Want to take a quick note, first of all, to a couple of new folks in the chat. First of all, we got Ahmed, our man, Jellydeck 100.
Hey,
great to see ya.
Happy New Year, all.
Happy New Year to you, Ahmed. And we also have another person from Nevada.
Oh yeah,
the Barack side.
Hey. We gotta say it. I gotta
extra magnificent beard come from. It is magnificent, and we can tell you barely watch our channel because it's been developing over the last few months.
Maybe maybe he listens to the podcast.
You know what, Jim? I'm going to run with that because the other way it just makes me feel bad. Anyway, great to see you here, Cody. And yes, I was preparing for this episode, and I wanted as big and bushy a McCready-esque beard as I could possibly pull off. That, and I was jealous of somebody I was visiting with when I was in Germany back in October. Jens has this glorious beard. Just awesome. I'm like, well, I want one of those. All right. Great to see you here. And what is DMG?
Hey, guys.
Oh, talking about bad CGI, referring to 2011. The Thing 2011. Here's a question for you, Jim. And it's kind of hooking back into craft, but I do.
Sure.
The creature effects are so good. And at times still a couple of scares where I'm like, I know that's coming. Not even a scare. It's not a jump scare. It's just, wow, that's jumping into horror, like real, true, awesome body horror.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I know this. Not only just do I intellectually know it's not real, there are things about it that really kind of say, yeah, that's a practical, that, and the way at times they're obviously cutting to, okay, now we're doing our special effects shot. Mm-hmm. But it still, or at least to me, it worked.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's that, what's the phrase, is that, where you just sort of accept. I mean,
the suspension of disbelief is so strong
that's the one.
By them.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of...
some of the stuff does look like plastic, but I mean, it's so crazy imaginative. Like they really take ideas and run with them. When the Halloran's head falls to the ground, it's got its own life. It sprouts legs, but they're not even. The head's not even right side up. It's upside down.
Yeah.
Like it's just there's no rules for this thing.
Yeah.
Except literally this thing, except to survive, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and fire bad, but they just run with it. Like it's a creative, malignant force. And it's impressive how much they put into that. Like it's a real, you can almost feel its intelligence the way it uses its tongue as a winch, to get away because it didn't have legs at the time. It's just an amazing thing. Yeah. I have a story in a sec. I'll tell you.
Yeah. You know what? Even as we're talking about it, and this is something DMG, Dragon Movie Guy, and I have talked about. I'll put forward this. The reason the CGI doesn't work in the 2011 version, sight unseen, whereas these practical effects work even now, is because everything else is firing, especially the story. We are immersed. We are owned by this thing. Any little thing that might bump us out of it, we're brought right back in because we buy these characters. We buy the tension that's being built. We are in the story. And I think it's the quality of the story that can sell a million things. And yeah, the effects are so good, even though we know they are not intellectually real. And at times you're like, oh, wait a sec, that's a little cockeyed. It's just, our suspension of disbelief is willing to go quite the distance because the story is just that good. And to quote our hopefully still a friend of the channel, Professor Eric Williams, all the effects are there to serve the story, not the other way around, unlike a movie with a bunch of water that we might have recently seen. Anyway, tell your tale before we move forward.
Sure. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for this movie. My late father, who passed away a couple of years ago, they would take us, my brother and I, in the summer. We would go travel to Vancouver and hang around, and he maybe wasn't used to having kids around so much. So he was having lunch. He was working out of the house one day, and my brother and I had rented The Thing. We were old enough to go down to the video store, rent The Thing, bring it back. I think.
Oh, very cool.
The adults were out for a movie, so we went to get like a pizza, and here's a 10. Don't spend it all in one place, and then we would get get pizza and pop and chips and a movie. So we got The Thing, and we liked it so much that we watched it again the next day. And my dad decided to join us. My dad decided to join us right in the middle of the movie, and he had made himself like a big ketchup-y, I think it was grilled cheese, and he would dip ketchup in and stuff, and it coincided. So he was making a call. He's like, okay, Bob, I just wanted to check on those Lund motors, see if we could get them for oh my god. And it was just that scene when they were doing the compressions, and he goes, oh, you know what, I gotta let me just change rooms. The kids are watching a show, and a doctor was doing compressions, and the chest turned into a mouth, and he had his hands bitten off. I gotta get out of this room. Just give me a sec. And he was so rattled that he left the room and continuing his call with Bob or whatever it was. But it was so funny. He wasn't a big gore guy, so he was horrified.
Yeah. Well,
normally he's a big tough guy, but.
Well, and my choices, although anyway,
you were broken into this, though. Like, you were familiar with this from the past as well, right? So it's,
no, I'm not. I get it. I totally get where your dad's coming from. Like that scene, that moment has almost as much impact on me now as it did first. And it's coming. It's like, what's happening here. Oh my God.
And it's a great 1-2 punch. It's like a bam, mouth, chomp, my arms.
Oh.
Like
genius.
Like it's sort of like, no, it's a classic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One more question.
Sure.
Before we move forward into meaning. Actually, I got a couple.
Sure.
Here's one for you. Okay, I mentioned before, some contemporary critics, not all, but some, criticized its pace as being too slow. Part of me, I don't know, it's only 109 minutes for fuck's sakes. Mm-hmm. That said, do you buy that?
No.
Yeah. Why?
Because what it is, and it's because I know all the things coming up, I had actually forgotten literally what happened after the doctor scene and the very last shot with the two guys standing by the, sort of lying by the fire. I had forgotten the last 20 minutes, and I had sort of forgotten that the doctor scene sort of came that late in the movie. But it struck me that this is a kind of a mashup. And what it is a mashup of is obviously a monster movie, but it's also a mashup of, I don't know if you would call it it's not a bottle episode because it's not a TV show, but it's something like the Hitchcock movie Lifeboat, where a bunch of people are trapped in one location, and the story is all on that site and those characters, and there's suspicion in there, and there's sort of things that go back and forth. So it's this mashup of a sort of a almost like a mystery play and a monster movie, and so those things have to reconcile themselves. And when it's not a monster movie, it's they're trying to figure out it's a a psychological thriller that they just happen to throw all these monsters in. But they could very well have done it without monsters as well. You could do like you could make this into a play.
An Agatha Christie one-roomer, 10 Little Idioms.
Yeah, maybe better than Agatha Christie, but
but he did refer to it. Like Carpenter referred to Agatha Christie. There's a mystery in this. I'm actually going to go a little further though, or I'm gonna disagree with both you and him. Why this movie works it isn't so much, although yes, they're trying to figure out who's the bad guy. It is because the camera is, for the most part, it kind of free ranges. Sometimes it's with the alien, sometimes and what that does, that the soundtrack, etc., it builds tension. There is suspense. If it was a straight up mystery, most of the time it'd be with McCready as he tries to figure it out, sleuthing, right? I'm not saying that we'd never worry about him, but that camera is everywhere, and there's a reason for that. There's information. It's not even, there's information that McCready might know that we don't know. We are always left wondering quite what's going on, yet we know more than McCready does. We know more than, and that just dials up that tension, and you need a little time, as you would say, Jim, for it to breathe, for us to build that tension. So you can have these big moments, but after that, it's almost like once something terrifying happens, you have to have a moment of decompression. You've gotten this cathartic moment. Decompress, because of course it's all that tension's been out the door now. Then you got to build it up again, and you can't just. It's not on off. You've got to, or at least I think in this movie that they're so masterful that it builds that tension. And it needs a little time, not a lot. Again, 109 minutes, including the credits. You don't need it forever. But you just need a little bit of that time.
I mean, that's why mystery isn't quite doing that's why I compared it to the Lifeboat, because I don't know if you've seen it before, but everything takes place on that lifeboat. Yeah. So it's sort of in a way like that, Antarctic base. Not so much makes me want to watch Lifeboat again now, but not so much one of those cozies, those mysteries.
Yeah, well, that's exactly.
He normally writes with his left, but this time he wrote with his right. And that kind of mystery. But
yeah, it's I think the Fraggin' LOL. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're talking about there. That's why I think mystery is not the right thing. It's suspense, and like you said, it's psychological thriller. There's other horror aspects, but part of it is just that tension as as we're build up to more terrible shit is going to happen. That fucking dog's wandering around. It's like, he's got somebody else. It's already in the people. It's in the people. Well, at the same time, great misdirection. You know what? Even in this film, it's like, it is Clark, isn't it? Oh, wait. It ain't Clark. Oh, well. Yeah. Looks like you got that one wrong.
That's sort of an underappreciated scene with all the fantastic sort of monster work, is that the blood test scene was pretty good. Like I was like, heating up the thing, putting it in the blood, see if the blood reacted. That was something else.
Another tension builder.
Yeah, and was super well done.
Yeah. And also, one of the best lines in the whole movie is, "I know you gentlemen have been under a lot weight. I don't want to spend the rest of the winter tied to this fucking couch." A great line. And again, they like just a master, build it up and really let it have time to before the big explosion. And then a little bit of bathos, just that little touch to kind of calm us all down before, all right, okay, folks, we're back on the roller coaster's moved up for another big one.
I wanted to, if I have a chance, I just wanted to mention a couple more aspects about story before we.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this.
Sure.
I got another question for you.
You bet.
Okay, editor Todd Ramsey says there was a MacReady Lives ending shot, but in the end, LOL, they stuck with the one they have, the one we watch. Was this the right choice?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm not, maybe as a kid, I wouldn't like the sort of the up in the air ending so much, but I've gained an appreciation for that, as in my dotage, in my old age. But yeah, I don't mind them as much anymore, and it actually is kind of a ballsy choice. You're not sort of putting a period on the story. You just sort of like putting a bit of an ellipses there. And ending with a final shot of Keith David and Kurt Russell, all beaten up. Not a bad way to end a movie. You have to say. And again, a little bit subjective. Keith David being a late regular on Community, I had no idea that was him in the movie. Like I was like, what? And the start of that great, because he does a lot of voiceover work. The start of that great voice is there. He's playing a tough young guy, which is kind of fun. But anyway, but that's it's a great ending, and it's memorable, right?
Yeah.
It's there's a reason why it didn't do so well when it was released, but there's a reason why it's become appreciated since, and I think it's choices like this, choices like that.
I'm thinking of think of the tacked on ending on Blade Runner. And there's an immediate satisfaction to it because you want your characters, you want the ones you've come to care about to have a happy ending. Of course, I don't think that really fits drama and horror as well. It's great for comedy. Comedy is all true love triumphs, unless it's a black comedy. But you know what I mean? Like it is meant. It is going. That's the train station. That's the terminus to the comedy train. Is we're all pretty good here, and life ain't bad. Or is it?
Yeah.
You though had you said you wanted to, before we move into meaning, you had a couple other things you wanted to mention about story.
Well, I just wanted a note of appreciation for the monster. Is that ultimately it's such a genius creation. I was going to say thing, but such a genius creation because we ultimately never know what its original source, what it originally looks like, if anything. Yeah. Like maybe it keeps one form and goes on to the next world or what have you. But, it's dog, it's human, and it's sort of an amalgam of different creatures. A little bit of props to the dog actors in this. They did such a great job. And that's another instant genius choice by Carpenter is them chasing what looked to be like a good dog. Why are they shooting this nice husky? Or shooting at this nice husky? And it immediately puts you like, there must be a reason, but I don't like it, and it makes you unbalanced
Already.
immediately. And
yeah, that dissonance,
yeah.
that tension.
And the other dogs being scared of it in the kennel, like whoever handled the pets in this is what a master. But so we ultimately never know what this thing looks like.
You
and
really, Jim,
even,
on just a quick side note, you need to watch
Sure.
that making of documentary.
Yeah. But
anyway, continue. Sorry.
It's on the list, but when it tries to become dog, it's one thing. It tries to become human, it's another thing. When it's tied to the bench, it's a whole other thing entirely. There's something happening with its head, and so that's a sort of an ongoing mystery for us as well. It takes so many different forms, and they're all horrific, in different amazing ways. So that was one thing. I just wanted to put that out there. The second thing I wanted to put out there is it's sort of this movie, The Thing, destroys that old trope, I guess, of the black guy getting it first. And in an amazing way, because the two black guys on the cast make it to the final four, which has to be a statement of some sort. Yaphet Kotto, of course, in Aliens, he sort of lasts a while as well, but not the first to go. And I guess at some point in the 60s or the 70s, that was a thing, that the black guy was the first to go, and subsequently I think Donald Glover has had lines like that where he acknowledges that in Community and things like that. But it was kind of neat to see.
Well, and I think maybe that's a perfect moment to hook into meaning. This is one, and again, it's not perfect, but one of the reasons, Jim, I talked about this film as being in the social nutrition checklist as being a class conscious film, or at least a kind of class aware one, is they're, first of all, they're all kind of schmoes.
Yeah.
And they also, especially the two black characters, especially Childs, it's the kind of, wait a second, just because I'm the mechanic kind of vibe. Why do I have to, that bit of pushback. Now that, I was kind of also thinking, is that's a bit of an 80s thing, like Die Hard. The blue collar cop is also, kicking off the next wave of propaganda. But I really did kind of get a vibe there, and that was sort of one of those reasons why I thought it was class conscious, or at least, well, on my soft marking scale. I'm grading on a curve. Jim, we hardly ever have a class-conscious film, like a truly class-conscious film. Even Emily the Criminal, she's an anti-hero. She is not some working-class hero. There's a moment in the film that if it was, that had the spirit of Coda, she would have been, goddamn right, so I'm going to go organize my fellow workers. No, she's like, well, I'll just go steal more. I'm going to go do more criming. Anyway, enough about that movie. Let's get back to this one. Jim, we are talking about the meaning now. This flick makes me think of Carpenter's They Live. Yeah. It's a little different. What do you think Carpenter wanted us to come away with in this movie? What's that takeaway from him as a director?
Yeah, well, when I was sort of reading a bit of the background on this, and it wasn't positively reviewed. It was coming out at the same time as a lot of other happy little science fiction movies like E.T. was coming out. I don't know if this is an answer to E.T., but it definitely, whereas E.T.'s like, trust our visitors and feed them Reese's Pieces or whatever, be kind to all aliens. This one is distinctly the opposite.
They came out at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. And so wildly different visions of who might visit Earth.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
And that they aren't
cautionary.
necessarily friendly.
Yeah, yeah. I just, I think it's just a almost a pro paranoia kind of movie. Uh, yeah, but is it because it's paranoid from within too? Like it's not just other species. It's within our own species. Don't trust anyone, and that's
Yeah.
it's sort of a big rumination on trust. I guess is you can't trust you can't trust nature
Yeah.
and you can't trust your fellow man perhaps. I mean maybe that's why it didn't do so well at the box office, inherently a negative movie, but
Yeah.
so good.
Well, he did mention, like, one of the themes he was going after. I mean, he's made a number of apocalyptic films. Jelly Duck 100 refers to two of his apocalyptic films, amongst three, really four, that starred Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
I'm wondering though, like the first movie, The Thing from Another World, that's a lot looser of a, it's referring to the same novella, but a much looser adaptation. Anyway, it leaned into, let's say, the anti-communist paranoia of the late 40s and early 50s. Do you think Carpenter was going for the same thing? This is 1982. It took him a year to shoot it, but already, Reagan had been in office for a year. Yeah, the anti-communist propaganda was ramping up, but not really that fifth column, be afraid of your neighbors kind of thing. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just going to look up when Red Dawn came out because that was must have been
Dreckie
1984.
piece. It was 80. I was in the militia. I was in the
84.
reserve. So yeah,
Yeah.
I remember seeing that with a bunch of army buddies, and we did not like it. We weren't impressed. We were.
Carpenter may have been. I don't normally associate him with being so.
Well, you look at They Live. That's more about
yeah.
corporate control and. Like,
yeah, that's true.
There's a bit of a, let's say, a left-wing perspective. Yeah. Even, I'd put his, if he's paranoid, it would be about the man.
Yeah.
You look at They Live, definitely Escape from New York, Escape from L.A. is like, well, the less we think about that, the better off we are. I don't, for me, Jim, to answer my own question, I don't think he was going for the same thing. And it is interesting. He does talk about it in that documentary, saying it's like, well, sometimes the people you love can hurt you. They may not be the same person inside, so I think they might be as much making a comment about that, the two or three faces, the people you think do you really know them,
There
in
are
a sci-fi body horror kind of way.
Yeah. There are a couple of lines in this where I think it's, well, I've known X for 9 years. I've known, how long have we've been working together? 14 years? So there's that, like, perhaps it's, is anything knowable? Is anybody knowable? Ultimately, if you wanted to break it down in that, I mean, that's pretty broad, rather than just looking at sort of Russians or America in 1982. But again, do we know any of our closest people? These people live with each other, right? So for extended periods too. Do I know this person?
Do I really know them?
Yeah.
No, like when the chips are down, do those connections that bind us become really, well, I mean, I know the guy, but do I really know the guy?
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember that. Yeah. One more question before we move on. Actually, I got a couple more. Here's one. this is definitely considered one of the great body horror films. Rightly so, I would think. But I wanted to ask you, and anyone in the chat who's got an idea, their thoughts on it. Oh, speaking of which, yes, DMG pointed out Cody from the Brock Up side. He is this close to breaking 1,000 subscribers. It's if you haven't already subscribed, Google up the Brock Up side and check him out. Subscribe. Anyway, back to this. Why do you think body horror works? Why does it appeal to us? Is it part of that? You can go really extreme where it gets into a fetish, but even just as part of a Cronenberg, what is it about body horror that we like to be frightened by? Oh, it looks like Jim has left the digital building. Let's see if we can't get him back, folks. In the meantime, I will... hey, everybody, it's me, Rob. Folks, yeah, we'll give Jim a few minutes, but tell you what, why don't I tell you about our next movie? Yeah, we are going to be next week. We're going to get out of the 80s and move into the 2022. This is a film that I did want to take a look at last year, but it got a very limited release, and then it was on streaming. But we were already getting into the Christmas season. Too many more movies than Jim and I have time to see and cover in this weekly show. But yes, we have it back on the agenda. We are going to be watching John Carpenter's... Oh, no, never mind. Sorry, not John Carpenter's The Thing. Vesper, a science fiction film. Lithuania, France, Belgian co-production with an English-speaking cast. Anyway, I'm really excited about it. You can catch it. If you didn't see it in the theaters, you can catch it on rental on good grief. Rental, on Apple. Apple, you can rent it for $7 Canadian. So check that out. Let's see if I can't find my colleague or if he's just out for the duration. Oh, he's restarting his machine. Folks, we're going to keep moving forward. And that means final thoughts. You know what? One of the things that came up, I know Jim and I think we're actually kind of bad for this. We'll talk about how great the theater experience is. And some of our peers will go a lot further than this. Never mind directors like Christopher Nolan. Go see my movie in the theaters. Sure, there's a pandemic. You might die, but my art needs to be seen in the theater. Otherwise, we won't get it. But in the documentary, and it's been said since, but Richard Mazer and Kurt Russell, they both note that this flick found its audience on video, that they managed to get it and enjoy it. Yeah, I'm thinking that, the next time, and we're talking, old school, rented on VHS, 4:3 crop, no letterbox, 20 on a 27 inch, if you're lucky, big ass television. No HD, no Ultra HD resolution. So next time you hear any of us go on and on about the primacy of the theatrical experience, remember The Thing and so many other films found their audience on video, found it on streaming. Jim and I, we've seen and praised some great films that only came out on streaming. It's easy to not Netflix, but The Power of the Dog is still a movie I think about, and only on streaming. So yeah, I think that's about it. There's my final thought. And yeah. Oh wait, we do have Jim might be back in the house, folks. Here, bear with me. Let me see if I can't get him back up and running here. Hey, Mr. Chaboyko, can we get a little of your audio? Can't hear a damn thing. Oh, and Jim has left the building again. Oh, still can't hear you. You know what? We're going to, folks. Oh, wait, are you back?
I think so.
Ah, there we are. Okay. Folks, I think we can actually, hey, Mr. Chaboyko. Oh, apparently he's saying nothing. Okay, Jim.
Hello.
We've moved into final thoughts. I've already given mine. What about you?
One thing that we hadn't mentioned is we don't normally talk about the movie poster, but I had it on here. What a classic the poster is. Just, minimalist, spare, the parka, the light, the thing. Such a great poster. It was even in the unfortunate blockbuster sitcom on Netflix last month. It was in the guy's office there. But yeah, no, this is. I was. A little anecdote. I was trying to get my daughter to watch it with me because I'm becoming aware of what she hasn't seen, like Alien and like The Thing. And I said, "Hey, come watch the Thing with me." And she said, "Is it scary?" Yeah, that didn't work out too well. I said, "Well, some people think it's scary, but yeah, no, she would." I don't think she would appreciate that, even at the age of 22. But yeah, no, it's just such a great movie. I was going to forward this to you as well. There is Kirk Douglas, order, which comes with a J&B bottle. Comes with that big floppy hat.
Oh, the action, an action figure.
Hands and face and yeah, it's pretty cool. But I mean, I think the quality of it. Am I on?
You're on. We can hear you. We just can't see you. So I'm just going to listen in closely.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Real brief. Just what a classic. It's easy to get back into something that you had such a despite the negativity of the movie, that you had such a positive experience with. I think I liked it as a kid because the horror was so creative. Like it was just, this is like D&D times and that kind of thing, but this was just imaginative, like crazy. And they did things with it and they took chances. I think it holds up today. The characters are good. They have a lot of things to do. It's such a pleasure sort of looking back into it. I don't think it's aged really. There's a couple little sequences where they harness the power of computers to show you the math about how the Thing infiltrated the dog, but which was sort of not super, it looked like Space Invaders.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean,
it is what it is. Okay.
And it's product.
We got to wrap this up, Jim.
Yeah.
we're way over. Okay. So you had said before we started, I'd asked, so is it a see it or skip it? You had said it's a definite see it. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Even stronger now, I would say.
Very cool. All right. Well, on that comedy note, I'm going to tell, okay, folks, just so you know, I will over here, there'll be a link to the Making of the Thing documentary. once the live stream's done and I can post that. Down there will be whatever YouTube thinks you should watch, and feel free to click on that because that makes us look good. And then, of course, you can subscribe down below. And I've got our Twitter, Instagram, and audio podcast links in the description below. Check them out. I think that's about it. Say goodnight, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
Good night, everyone. And remember, good night, everyone. And remember, it's never just a movie.